Good evening, everybody. I need a motion to call the meeting back order.
Second.
All in favor? We ran out. I want to welcome everybody tonight. We call this meeting to discuss. Oh, sorry.
United States and the Republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good evening, everybody. We call this meeting to discuss the recent event with the boys soccer team. At this time, I would ask Dr. Farris to give a report.
The board asked me to kind of review the events that occurred that led to the reason we're all here. I know that it's upset people. I know that it's an upsetting situation. And our hope is that we provide just details of what happened, allow the community to speak and share their concerns and their upsetment, and try to do everything we can to move forward productively for all of our kids. On Tuesday, October 10th, the district became aware of the hazing incident from Snapchat post. The video showed a sophomore student getting on their knees in a parking lot off campus. A senior student was standing over that student, hitting the younger student on the back of the head and neck. Several other students in the video were heard laughing in the background. Comments on the team Snapchat from students included he got what he deserved, and it was for being late to practice. A discipline administered to an identified student, and the team was spoken to by the coach prior to the video. At that point in time, there was no intention to cancel the season. Building administration interviewed 4 students on that day and discovered this was a practice passed down from previous year's team. A senior was appointed to the title of Supreme Leader each year. The Supreme Leader was in charge of enforcing what's called a lapse to players who had infractions, such as being late to practice. Video was recorded during that first week of practice that was posted to Snapchat. Events took place after practice in a parking lot off school grounds. On Wednesday, 10/11, to ensure that players on the team understood what hazing was and why it was not acceptable to practice, our athletic director held a meeting with the JV team and the varsity team after school. The athletic director prepared a lesson based on hazing practices and the importance of building strong, positive team culture. The following is the presentation that was shared with students. I think it's important just to show the slides that were shown to the students. At this point, there was still no decision to cancel the soccer season. This is the first slide, just showing the simplicity. The question was asked by the athletic director, what is hazing? And there's a back and forth between him and the students about some ideas about what they thought that might be. He then showed a definition of hazing, which is an activity expected of someone joining or participating in a group that humiliates, degrades, abuses, or endangers them, regardless of the person's willingness to participate. There are 3 components that define hazing. It occurs in a group context. It's humiliating, degrading, or endangering behavior. It happens regardless of an individual's willingness to participate. We talked about the spectrum of hazing. There's extreme and very dangerous hazing to less dangerous hazing, but it all falls under the category of hazing, including harassment, intimidation, or violence. We went over different types of hazing with the students and asked them if they could think of others. I think they gave them some ideas. He then reviewed the student handbook code of conduct, which is basically outlines what hazing is and how it's unacceptable in the schools. This is also in the final forms when you sign up to play a sport. You sign off that you're understanding what this is and that you're not going to engage in it as a practice. You're a player on the team. He then shared a quote from a captain of a team that had happened in the past to show that a program got shut down as a result of it. And he was emphatic in saying that this is really important. We don't want our programs to be shut down because of things like this, and talked about that. He then focused on culture. We asked, what is culture? What ways can we build positive culture on your team? And I believe you had a conversation with students that was a give and take about ways to promote positive culture. And then he gave a definition of culture, and in a sports context, the goal is to create the best culture possible in terms of the way we do things around. We then talked about different ways the teams can create positive team culture, and the team participated in that discussion. And then he talked about a legacy, and you want to leave the program better than you found it. And he explained to students that sports is a privilege, not a right, and that we have to follow the rules in order to play. Again, at that point, there was no decision made to shut down the season. On Wednesday, October 11th, following the presentation, the athletic director and the assistant principal reported the current findings of their investigation to the superintendent and board of education during an executive session. With the consent of the Board of Ed, the superintendent directed the building admin to interview all students on the soccer team to ensure that nothing was being overlooked. At this point in time, the season would not be canceled unless any new information presented itself through student meetings. The principal, assistant principal, and athletic director interviewed as many members of the JV and varsity team as possible by dividing them into thirds and interviewing them one at a time. They got as many as they could. I don't think they got every single student, but they got a large number of students from it. All students were asked the same 5 questions. And all students were asked to hand in their cell phones during the interview. This is a standard practice at the high school when you're talking to groups, because kids tend to talk during the interviews and they don't want them sharing information. Findings from these interviews revealed the following. Other members of the team were being hit throughout the season in the same manner. Additional members of the team were doing the hitting throughout the season, not just the supreme leader. More than one of these incidents were recorded on video and posted. Reasons for getting hit included being late to practice, but also for other reasons, such as drinking from the wrong water bottle during practice. Some students came to school wearing t-shirts to protest the suspended player that day as well. The district took the following actions Thursday afternoon. Administration met with the soccer team to inform them that the season was canceled due to hazing. The building administration sent an email to the soccer parents explaining that students were interviewed and the remaining 2 games of the season will be canceled. And the district, myself, sent out a notification to the community explaining that the season was being canceled due to hazing. It also pointed out a separate concern about past situation from prior years related to a racist or anti-Semitic situation. We'll get into that in a second and explain that. I think the context is important. Several parents met with Dr. Ferris Thursday evening to convey concerns. There were a wide range of concerns, and it was upsetting to hear the concerns because it's upsetting. The whole thing is upsetting. The largest issue that I felt was the biggest priority at the time was that parents were upset that the district letter mentioned past instances of racism and anti-Semitism. They felt that they were stated that the students themselves were racist, and the news, they picked up the article on an online story and posted that. That concerned me, and directly after the meeting, I wanted to make sure that was rectified because I want to make it clear. I'm trying to rectify. Let me just finish. That none of these students in this year were involved in anything anti-Semitic or racist, and I want to make that clear. Dr. Ferris acknowledged that the intent of his email to the community was not to portray the students as racist and anti-Semitic, but to point out that there were 2 different situations that occurred, and neither was acceptable, and both had to be addressed. He advised the parents he would work to correct misinformation in the local media. Based on the parent meeting, I took the following actions immediately after. I called Newsday to make sure they corrected their online story about hazing. This was not easy. We went to a couple of different writers and an editor. I was able to get that article changed. The article that was posted at 6 p.m. was corrected at 8:37 p.m. and it removed the comments, and it made a very clear statement for me. To be clear, I think I said in the email or in the article, these students were not involved in anything racist. I spoke to multiple news outlets that were calling us to make sure that if they were going to write anything or post anything, that they would not include anything about anti-Semitism or racism. On Saturday morning, we saw an article at 8 a.m., I believe, from the Suffolk County News, which posted it as if they were racist. I called them and they took that article down by 8:37. Sent out an additional email to the community to ensure that it was clear that the soccer season was canceled due to hazing and not anti-Semitism or racism. It's something that was found in our previous season. Questions were raised as to why the letter included the current season and testing. Earlier this year, the district further investigated a claim of anti-Semitic bullying and harassment. Findings from that investigation were reported to the Board of Ed in September of 2023, and this all was happening with us not knowing anything about the hazing that was going on the soccer team. This was a separate investigation. So findings from that investigation were reported to the Board of Ed in a September 2023 executive session, and found that anti-Semitic bullying did take place on a previous soccer team involving a particular student. On October 5th, and this again was prior to us knowing anything about the hazing going on with the team, the board president read a statement to the community and posted it on our website. Mr. Cooley is going to read that statement now, just so people have context for what that separate issue was.
Okay, here is the statement from October 5th. Our Board of Education is committed to the safety and well-being of all students. This includes protecting our students from racism, bullying, or hazing of any kind. Recently, our board learned that a former student in our schools was subject to anti-Semitic comments throughout their time in our high school and as a member of one of our sports teams. We are saddened by this, extremely disappointed in what occurred, and sorry that our former student had endured that kind of experience while within our schools. The purpose of this statement is to acknowledge and apologize for what had happened in the past, and to also demonstrate we as a Board of Education are committed to doing better in the future. While our survey data from our 100-day study shows that a large majority of our students feel safe and supported in our schools, we have an obligation to ensure that all of our students feel this way. This is why we voted in favor of board goal number 3, continuing our work to ensure that all students feel a sense of belonging and safety in our schools, no matter who they are, where they come from, or what they believe in. As such, we are asking Dr. Ferris to review and update all our anti-bullying and harassment policies with his administrative team, updating trainings for our staff, and work collaboratively with all members of our learning community to ensure that we honor our strong beliefs that racism, anti-Semitism, harassment, or bullying of any kind is unacceptable in our schools. We have an amazing community full of wonderful teachers, students, and staff members, and we are proud of these points. However, we can and must do better. And I would also just like to add, in the context of today, that the investigation that was concluded in the summer confirmed that anti-Semitism is a form of bullying and it can be as simple as name calling. And when this name calling is allowed to continue and be repeated over and over, others start to take it as a truth. If it is left unchecked, it will continue to grow. Some say it's not a big deal and that it's only name calling. Others say it's only kids being kids. But for the receiver, it can have a terrible effect on their self-esteem, well-being, and life. As a school board and a community, we cannot allow any form of bullying, hazing, racism, or anti-Semitism of any kind in our schools. We must make every effort to educate what behavior is acceptable and take action when it is not. Okay? Do you have anything?
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing, and this is not directed to soccer parents, it's any community members. I'm noticing that some people are posting the retracted articles on Facebook pages and social media pages, and all I would say is that continuation of posting an article that was pulled down that was inaccurate is harmful to our kids. So if you're out there and you're posting again,
Please.
so I'm just reporting what people have responded.
Okay, so now we're going to move to the public comment portion of our meeting. And I'm going to read what I read at every board meeting, a statement about how we conduct our public comment portion. So the Board of Education appreciates feedback from the community. And we recognize free let me take a drink of water. Okay, let's restart. The Board of Education appreciates free speech from the community, and we recognize free speech as a fundamental freedom. These freedoms are not without restrictions. We have regulations specified by law and by board policy. We encourage our community members to offer public comment. According to Sayville School Board Policy 1230, we request the following. Participants in public session must demonstrate civility as they address the board and community. 30 minutes have been set aside for comments by the public. The board reserves the right to limit or extend public participation if it deems necessary. Comments and questions from the public are limited to 3 minutes per person and should be related, in this case, to the soccer situation. Speakers are requested to identify themselves or the group they represent and direct their comments to the board. The board will not permit discussions involving individual students, district personnel, or community members. This full policy is available on the Deepening website, and we appreciate your support to have a productive meeting. Thank you. Okay, so can I have a hand, show of hands of who would like to speak? Okay, thank you very much.
So, first of all, thank you for allowing us to speak. Thank you for putting this meeting together tonight. I would ask that everybody here behave in a way that is representative of this team and this organization, because it doesn't help if we embarrass ourselves. That's all I would ask. And I would ask the board, given the fact that we have met beforehand and we want to do this in a very civil, organized way, rather than pass the microphone around to 40 different adults taking 3 minutes. The 5 of us are going to speak, and I would ask for leniency with the 3 minutes. Is that fair enough?
Okay, but I just need assurance that there's not gonna be another 5 after that. That's how that can be abused, right?
I didn't ask, I didn't do everybody here. I'm talking about the soccer parents. Most all the soccer parents got together and asked the 5 of us to speak on behalf of them so that this could be organized in civil.
Okay.
And and that's
Can I
really
just
you.
go hands again, who actually wants to speak to me? Okay, so I think we can make that accommodation. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank
My name is Kevin Folks. I'm a lifelong Sayville resident. I'm a graduate of the class of 1989. I'm here with my wife, Chris, and my larger soccer family. I have a son who graduated my oldest son, Will, is a graduate of Sayville High School in 2022. 2019. My second son, Patrick, graduated from Sayville in 2022. I have a daughter who is in 9th grade and plays on JV soccer. And I have a son who is the reason I'm here, who is a senior in Sayville High School and a member of the Sayville varsity soccer team. And I say that with as much pride as I can muster right now. I want to cover 3 things if I could. You sort of covered one already. I will give you our talking points with regards to the events leading to the cancellation. I'd like to talk about the email, and then finally finish with the impact, and the most important thing, the impact that this has had on our students, on our kids. Is that fair? All right. I saw your timeline. A couple things I would point out or add to that. You sort of brushed over it quickly. The student that was accused of using poor judgment, he was brought in, his parents were brought in with him. He was disciplined. It was quick, it was severe. I know that's a relative term. He was kicked off the team, he was suspended from school. They accepted the responsibility. They were apologetic, they were remorseful. With the lesson that child, who I've known since he was 3 years old and is a great kid, a fantastic kid, is that when we make poor decisions and we use poor judgment and it affects other people, there's consequences for those actions. There's recourse and there's punishment. And they understood that and they accepted it and they moved on. And I think that's a lesson that we should all remember. Okay. We would argue that through the interviews, first of all, the interviews that went on for 2 days, I can only speak for myself. If my kid is 4 minutes late to gym class, I get 3 phone calls and an email. If it rains twice in a week, I get 3 phone calls and an email. I get a lot of communication from Sayville High School. My son was interviewed about incidents regarding hazing on his team, and not one person reached out to me, my wife, or anybody else. Now, I had a meeting with Dr. Cox and Mr. Hoffer on Friday morning with my wife, and we were told that in a perfect world, everybody gets contacted before we speak to the kids. But this was a time-sensitive issue, and there wasn't time to do that. I guess my questions are, number one, why was it a time-sensitive issue? Okay, this is an important issue. We're talking about hazing, we're talking about seasons getting canceled, and we're interviewing kids for 2+ days, and nobody, not one parent, was contacted beforehand. The other thing that I would like to add is I understand that the conversations unveiled what was, I think the term was widespread. As of this moment right now, there's 22 kids on the varsity soccer team. There's 22. As of this moment right now, 2 have been disciplined. They've been disciplined because they made bad choices. They used poor judgment, right? So they were disciplined. My question is, why was the season canceled for the other 20 kids? Because if there was widespread evidence that this was pervasive and systemic, enough so that we cancel the season, why not any other disciplinary action taken? Okay. I guess I'm as a parent, and I think most of you people on the board are parents and educators. I'm asking for your help to rationalize to my son, right, and to the other boys on this team who had nothing to do with what we're talking about. When they do, when my kids understand when they do something they're not supposed to, there's repercussions for their actions, and they understand that. But when my son does exactly what we asked all of our kids to do every single day when they leave the house, and that is make good choices, and then his season gets canceled and he's associated with anti-Semitism and racism, help me rationalize that with them, because I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time. And I got 4 kids and none of them are perfect. None of them. But when they do the right thing and they're punished anyway, that's a really, really tough pill to swallow. Speaking of anti-Semitism and racism, that brings me to the email. I'm glad that you defined what actually happened, because that was left out in your original email, and everybody on Long Island and in the tri-state area were left to their own interpretation as to an act of violence. And you can only imagine what every single one of us, phone calls we received and emails with colleagues that we work with around this island about what the hell is going on in Sayville. An act of violence. And I'm not telling you it wasn't. I'm not telling you it was, but it would have been helpful when the communication went out to the entire community talking about acts of violence to be more definitive as to what took place. And I'm glad you did it here tonight so that everybody knew, so I don't have to go through it. With regards to your other quote, that there was evidence of additional behaviors in past years that included forms of racism and anti-Semitism. I know you alluded to it a little bit before. I would appreciate more color. My son's only been on varsity for 2 years, so I'm not familiar with the background of these allegations. But since you decided to put my son, my family, and this entire group here in the crosshairs of your allegation, and I have to not answer to, but I have conversations every day since your email went out with my clients, with my colleagues and my coworkers all over Long Island and the tri-state area as to the anti-Semitism and racism in the town that I live in. And can I comment on it? So I would like to know more, because I don't have the answers, right? And if you say to me, well, it's an ongoing investigation and we can't comment on it, I can respect that, but I would ask why you would ever put it in a communication to the entire community. You made a decision to try and convict all of these kids in the court of public opinion. You're an educated man, and you have to know that in a world where social media dominates everything and we're in a 24-hour media cycle, that this was going to get picked up. And it did. When we sat in your office, 30 minutes after it went out, the Long Island Press had already picked it up. They had already picked it up. And in addition to them, and this just keeps getting better and better. In addition to the Long Island Press and Newsday and CBS that we've all seen the accounts, you may or may not have seen this. This is how a positive turns negative super fast. Greg Sarah, we're all familiar. He's a reporter for Newsday. He was at the game on Saturday. Kyle Messina catches a 56-yard touchdown pass from Jake Triptree with 2:23 remaining, and Sayville takes a 19-18 lead over West Hampton on 4th down and 10. I was at the game. I know you guys were there as well. The place is wild. That's from Greg Sarah. in response to his tweet, did anyone yell out racist or anti-Semitic words during the game? Sayville's go to Sayville. Nice, Greg. Promoting a school on your social media that allows anti-Semitism and racism. Good job, buddy. I got this tonight from another Sayville resident whose daughter plays on the Sayville soccer team. He's a coach. He has a lot of coaching buddies. This guy, his coaching buddy happens to live in Georgia. This was an email that he sent out to all his coaches. Said, coaches, this week's hazing and bullying article occurs on Long Island, New York. A high school canceled soccer season, parentheses, they play soccer in the fall. They have elements of racism and anti-Semitism in the program for a couple of years. So this year, the superintendent canceled the season completely. That came from Georgia. So this community that I've lived in for 52 years is now looked at everywhere on Long Island and apparently beyond as a racist, anti-Semitic community. And I can tell you for 52 years it hasn't been. So in 2 years, you've been able to change that, and it's extremely upsetting. With regards to your retraction, I'm interested in a couple things. Number one, I'm assuming that if you retracted it and you took it back, that you realized that you shouldn't have put it in there in the first place, right? So you made a mistake, you used poor judgment, right? You made a bad decision to put it in there. It shouldn't have been in there. It had nothing to do with this year.
Excuse me, though, I just want to say, there was no retraction, it was just a clarification, that's all, there wasn't a retraction. Actually was,
It was a different article from Suffolk County News that was retracted.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the clarification.
okay, I thought you, okay,
Okay, but he was clarifying what he said. And in doing so,
he's clarifying what they reported. Is that
Maybe
what-
sorry.
No,
I'm gonna get to that. Okay? When we make poor decisions and use bad judgment, there's repercussions for that. At least if you're a 17-year-old, there is, right? That's the lesson that he learned very clearly. With regards to what they reported, if I'm not mistaken, the quote was, I offer the following to clarify for the community what I believe local media may have reported incorrectly. I don't know who said evidence of additional behaviors in past years that include forms of racism and anti-Semitism. I think it was yours, but correct me if I'm wrong. So I don't know that local media reported on it incorrectly. I think they do what local media does. They pick up on sensational things and they write about them. Okay, for whatever reason, this had to be sensationalized. Lastly, and then I will turn it over to my friends here. As far as impacts on the students, this past Saturday, as we all know, was homecoming. It was rainy and cold, as it's been for the last 7 weekends. And my son, my senior in high school, who's leaving to go to the game, I noticed was wearing his very thin lacrosse windbreaker. And when I asked him, I said, hey, bud, you got this jacket a month ago. It's brand new. You're a senior. It's warm. It's waterproof. Why are you not wearing that? I knew the answer, but I was hoping I was wrong. And he said, Dad, I just don't need the negative attention right now. See, you never met my son, Dr. Ferris. You've never met him. And I would venture to guess you've never met any of these boys, but I'm not positive of that. But I know you never met my son. But you took it upon yourself with the click of your mouse to associate him with anti-Semitism and racism that he cannot outrun. Maybe in time you will be able to, but you made that decision. And that is really, really unbelievable to me. Countless seniors had to go home on Thursday and rewrite their essays because early decisions were October 15th, and a lot of them had written about Sayville soccer and the impact it had on their lives. And they had to rewrite it because they didn't want to be associated with Sayville soccer. I had to text Mr. Dillon on Sunday night at his home. I had to interrupt his dinner because I value his opinion, and I wanted to ask him, should I add Sayville soccer to my son's application? Kids on this team who had nothing to do with any of the stuff we're talking about tonight are being teased and harassed by not only players, but coaches from their travel teams in other towns. Hey, we need another Hazer over here. My nephew, who was a 4-year varsity player, graduated last year. He plays at Geneseo, where it's cold right now. And he only brought one jacket. It was that one, and he doesn't wear it. He doesn't wear it because of the negative implications that come with it. I will finish with the fact that I'm a football guy. I played with James. Carl was right behind me. I've always been a football guy. I love Sayville football. I was fortunate enough to play here. It's a great football town. My oldest son played up until JV. My second guy played through varsity. I coached at the youth level. I was part of the board. I loved it. I love it still. Admittedly, I didn't know very much about soccer until my son started playing in 9th grade, when this community welcomed us into their family. And parents like Yana and Fabio Berlingeri and my sister and brother-in-law, spent the next 4 years teaching me the game of soccer. I still don't understand the offsides or the 18-yard box, but I'm learning. Here's the thing I did learn real quick. Okay, when I first started going to soccer games, when my son was in 9th grade, nobody goes to soccer games. Nobody goes. The parents go, the grandparents go, and the siblings go. That's it. There's no band at the soccer games. There's no cheerleaders at the soccer games. There's no homecoming. There's no floats for the soccer kids, right? The whole town doesn't come out to support like they do, like I do. I was there on Saturday. I don't have a kid playing football. They don't come out. These kids, they don't play for the jersey. They play because they love the sport and they play for each other. And any other depiction of these boys is incorrect. I am so fortunate that my son has been a part of this culture for the last 4 years, and my wife and I are incredibly grateful for them welcoming us in. I will leave you with this. I just asked, what are the lessons that we are imparting to these young men as we send them out into the world? Is it that if you do the right thing and you make good choices, they will cancel your season? If you do the right thing and you make good choices, you get to be associated with anti-Semitism and racism. If you're a 17-year-old boy and you make bad choices and use poor judgment, you are punished. And you must accept that. But if you're an adult and you make a bad choice and you make a bad decision, there's not a punishment. There's not recourse. Is that the lessons we send them out with? Because it feels like it. And the last thing I will say, and then I will sit down, is that I would ask you for the next 30 seconds to do me a favor. Forget about my kid. Forget about these boys. Forget about Sayville soccer. I would ask you to do me a favor. I would ask you to think about your child, your niece, your nephew, your grandchildren. I would ask you to think about them and either speed up time or rewind it. And I would ask you to make your child 15, 16, 17 years old. And then I would ask you to imagine that somebody writes the worst possible thing, the worst depiction in this day that we live in right now. Okay? A week and a half removed from the second worst atrocity to the Jewish people in the history of the world is written about your child. Not mine, yours. Think about that. And for one brief, miserable moment, you get to feel what we feel like. I thank you. Thank you. My name is Jeff Yonkers. I have 2 boys that graduated in 2021, and I have 1 boy that's going to be graduating this year. What did the public hear the other day? The first thing they heard was racist, anti-Semitic. Let me repeat that. Racist, anti-Semitic behavior in soccer cancels the remaining season. That was the headline of the Suffolk County News. My question is why? Why did it have to be like that? Acts of violence is stated in the email that went out to the community and ultimately to the news within minutes. Due to the email being written so poorly, a second email was needed to be sent out to clarify the misconception, and hurried phone calls to the media that had to make this right. Let's be crystal clear to the public. The alleged hazing incident involved a person kneeling and getting smacked on the back of the neck. The perception of this community is now Sayville is a bunch of racist, anti-Semitic, violent people, which is clearly not true. The damage is done. It's similar to how a beer company could be put away with one commercial. The damage is done and can never be reversed. Just an example, a professional acquaintance of mine came out and asked me what happened. Before I could tell him, before I can even get my story out, he said, let me guess. He described something being shoved up somewhere, and I'll leave it at that. That's the perception of this miscommunication. I have several questions for the Sayville Board of Education. I'm going to ask these questions and do not wish to be interrupted. I'd like written responses from the Board of Education, and I'll be sending an email later tonight. Did the Board of Education approve the first email and the second clarifying email that went out to the community? Did the Board of Education approve the cancellation of the soccer season? Was part of the cancellation due to the team supporting their teammate by wearing supporting shorts? Was the racism and anti-Semitism accusations that were from more than 2 years ago, before any of these players were even on the team, were those accusations against faculty, coaches, or the team? I think you guys need to clarify that, and we would like answers. Was anyone held responsible for the racism and the anti-Semitism accusations? Was any faculty held responsible? Was any coaching? Was any staff? Was any students? I'd like the Board of Education, their definition of violence. As the email used the term violence, were any authorities called outside of Sayville District? Is the Board of Education going to make the author of the email give a well-deserved public apology for embarrassing us all? What is the Board's education plan on doing to reprimand this person responsible for drafting and sending out this defaming email? Termination, written up, what are you guys going to do? Most importantly, if the Board of Education knew there was an issue, how has this been addressed in the past? What are you going to do about it? And it doesn't happen in the future, besides a meeting 3 or 4 days ago. As I close here, my heart really goes out to the boys soccer team, the Sayville High School, and the Sayville community for being labeled. I just want to thank the superintendent, Ferris, for ruining it all.
My name is Joseph Marino. I have 4 students that have, one that's already graduated from the district. He's a sophomore at St. Bonaventure. I have a senior that was on the soccer team. He's got a twin sister that plays volleyball, and I have a younger daughter that plays on the field hockey. My kids have been involved with the sports and athletics in this community. I coach youth sports, and I've never seen any one of the students do anything other than support their teammates and be good friends and family and support each other. So none of us here, the parents of the soccer team, are in any way condoning hazing or the behavior that transpired. That's not the reason we're here. The reason we're here is the manner in which it was dealt with by the administration and the Board of Education. Okay. In our opinion, the administration themselves used acts of bullying, intimidation, defamation, and violated constitutional rights of free speech of the kids. The initial boy that was removed from the team on October 10th, he and his family took the punishment and were prepared to move on. However, what transpired in the next 2 days is the issue. On Wednesday, as was pointed out, the entire team were brought to the auditorium where Dr. Cox administered what was referred to in his letter as a restorative lesson regarding the incident and hazing. Every parent I have spoken to says their child described it similarly. Dr. Cox was angry at times, he yelled, he raised his voice. He personally described it as speaking emphatically. Tenor, nonetheless, was not restorative, in the opinion of the kids and of us as parents. They were told that their actions could cause serious bodily harm. How could they do this? Their teammates, their brothers, their family, they bleed purple, all of these things. And that's great, but the lesson could have been better. The tenor could have been much better. You could have had professionals there to speak to them, the school nurse to explain to them what could have happened. It was all put together in an ad hoc manner, in a quick manner. I understand that it was a pressing issue, but it was not handled, in our opinion, correctly. Then on Thursday, many of the boys wanted to support their friend and teammate, who as Dr. Cox said, was their family and brother. The boys made up T-shirts. They wore the student's number, they said free him, and that was it. I was told that most of the boys wore a zip-up sweatshirt over it most of the day, and I did not hear of one instance where the shirts caused a disruption of the school day. However, the administration took this as an affront or a sign of disrespect. And it's my opinion and our opinion that this is what led the boys to be herded down to the attendance office without the parents being contacted. They were corralled together in a glass room on display for the whole school to see them as racist, anti-Semitic bullies. They were then interviewed individually, where again, every parent I've spoken to says their child felt pressured, intimidated, and even bullied. They were threatened with suspension, expulsion from other sports if they did not cooperate. These tactics, which abandoned law enforcement because they produced unreliable results, were used to gain information that was then used by the administration to justify canceling the remainder of the season, stating that the actions were pervasive and ongoing. Regardless of the boys' intent or the administration's perception of them, those T-shirts were constitutionally protected rights of free speech. In the landmark case of Tinker versus Des Moines, decided by the Supreme Court in 1969, the Supreme Court held that those type of things are free speech. That court reasoned that in our system, undifferentiated fear or apprehension of disturbance is not enough to overcome the right of freedom of expression. That case permitted students to wear black armbands to protest the Vietnam War. Certainly, kids wearing a T-shirt to support their teammate cannot be held to be more disruptive than that. The court also stated that in order for the state, in the person of school officials, to justify prohibition of a particular expression of opinion, it must be able to show that its action was caused by something more than a mere desire to avoid the discomfort and unpleasantness that always accompany an unpopular viewpoint. Nonetheless, it led to the most egregious part of this whole situation. After the cancellation, the email we've been discussing was email blasted, labeling the team again as violent, humiliating, the acts as systemic, ongoing, racist, and anti-Semitic. The last part, again, in the wake of the atrocities taking place to Israel in the Middle East. Immediately concerned, parents arrived at the administration building demanding to meet with Dr. Ferris to correct these egregious and defamatory accusations. Well, Dr. Ferris did meet with us, with several of us. He was steadfast in defending his actions. He did concede that the use of racist and anti-Semitic accusations were misquoted. He then ended the meeting stating that he had to issue a retraction or a clarification. He refused any of us to be involved with that process. The clarification which came out was posted almost 4 hours later and was woefully ineffective in stemming the backlash in the media and social media against these boys, their families, and the entire Sayville community. The ultimate damage caused by this defamatory and grossly negligent action will only be fully realized in the days, months, and years ahead, as these students and past students and the community deal with the consequences. In closing, our community entrusted you, the Board of Education, with hiring a superintendent of schools to represent our community and protect and educate our children. Now, just over a year into your tenure, we got the escalation of a relatively minor incident being lumped with the alleged past offenses to suit some unknown agenda. As you have already heard, the gross negligence in sending out that harmful and defamatory statement will have untold consequences for our children, their families, and the Sayville community. Dr. Ferris and members of his staff acted unprofessionally, negligently, and illegally. The soccer team was told they had consequences for their actions. We here tonight would like to know what the consequences for the superintendent and any other members of his staff that acted inappropriately are. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Fabio Berlingieri. I have 3 children, 2 in college and 1 in the senior. They're all ex-soccer players and just a little bit about it. Racist anti-Semitic behavior in soccer team hazing cancels remaining of the season. Racist anti-Semitic. Imagine this headline was about your children. Just for a second, imagine if you heard and you woke up that morning seeing that big headline. And it's all lies. And we know it's all lies. Like I said, I'm proud father of 3 boys. They're all very, very proud to have been stable soccer players, stable athletes, stable students. I personally have been a volunteer coach and board member for women's soccer for almost 20 years. I'm the current president, been for 10 years, and I've also volunteered the past 8 years to coach the Sayville High School soccer team. Because I'm very passionate about soccer and kids. I have coached almost every soccer player for the past 8 years that came through this high school. And some since they were 4 years old. These boys are like my children. They're close, they're a family, they're great kids. Always with each other. So many great memories. Dr. Ferris, the reputation of all these wonderful young men has been tarnished with that negligent letter that was sent. Many of these young men who have graduated or are still in college are calling me with concerns. Some are now teachers and coaches and are being questioned at their new jobs. And some as they're applying for job interviews. These wonderful young men have been forever labeled racist, anti-Semitic, and violent. And we know that's all lies. But that's what they have to deal with daily now, as we do, and these boys have, and all these Sayville residents do. This has caused so much unnecessary pain. How can a man of your status send something so damaging to the mental wellness of these boys who will forever have to defend themselves for being a Sayville soccer player? And apologies owed to every single soccer player, their families, and this wonderful Sayville community. There's one more thing I have to share. Last summer, when my son was in ICU for 2 weeks, the doctor said he probably never played soccer again and he was about to lose his leg. These boys gave him the strength to fight because he wanted to play so badly. He said with his buddies. Because of the support of these boys, these families, and the Sayville community, my son got to play his senior year with his family. Because that's what they are. They're a family, and you're trying to destroy that. It's a disgrace. You should say, you should resign.
Good evening. My name is John Burke. I live in West Sayville. I have 4 children and I have a wife that grew up here in Sayville. I'm deeply rooted in our local soccer community. 14 years ago, I left a corporate job, pursued my passion of soccer, make a career out of it, and I'm living in the soccer world. I'm currently the head varsity coach here at Sayville High School of the girls program. I'm the director of operations of the local Bayman Soccer Club, and I'm the junior academy director of Sousa Soccer Academy, which is currently the largest youth soccer organization on Long Island. I oversee all children for that programming from the ages of 2 to 9 for Sousa. My oldest son, Owen, is graduated from Sayville. He was a 4-year varsity starter, 2-year captain, and an all-state selection. My second son, Liam, is a current sophomore and is on this current team right now. My daughter, Erin, is in 8th grade and plays soccer. And my son, Brendan, is in 6th grade and he eats, breathes, and lives soccer for a living. I share all of this with you so that you understand how deeply rooted I am into the culture of our local soccer community. There are members of the current boys varsity team that I have coached and I have known, and I look around this room and I see faces, and some of you are up there and some of you are here, that I've known and coached your children when they've been 2, 3, 4 years old. because I started my programming at 2. There are past members of the Sayville Soccer Varsity Boys Program who now I currently employ, and they work for me as coaches. They coach over at Bayman, and they also coach over at Susa. I have been instrumental in organizing and starting an alumni game, which includes past boys and girls teams from the Sayville Soccer Program. Every year, the Friday after Thanksgiving, they get together, they reunite, they bond, and they celebrate the great culture that they've come to know as Sayville Soccer. From that game, we raise money and we give a scholarship to a graduating senior every year. I understand that this board here has heard negative things about the boys soccer program and the culture. And I understand why you might believe everything you hear. In my professional career, I oversee programming for over 1,400 kids every single year. I do not have a 100% satisfaction rate. I get emails of issues they bring up. I get phone calls of disgruntled people all the time. It's part of my job to listen to them, solve the problems, and help them with the issues that they bring up. I know on any given year, I might have 1,350 people who are extremely happy and they love the program. But I know that 50 of them might be extremely disgruntled. I can guarantee you, those are the 50 that I always hear from. And I know that you guys as a board can nod your head and say, those are the things that you typically hear. What has been happening to this board is that for the past 5 years, you have been hearing from a very small portion of the Sayville soccer community. It may have been one family, it may have been a few families that come to your meetings month after month. They write you letters, they complain they've been mistreated. I am not here to dispute that. That may or may not be true. Most of the people in the soccer program are not going to come to your board meetings. They're not going to come here and sing praises and take their 3 minutes of how great the soccer program is. But I can make you a promise. You go find 4 to 5 hours of your time. I am good at organizing people, not a lot of things, but I will get 50 to 100 people to give you a statement exactly how great the culture that they experienced from Sayville Soccer. One particular story that comes to mind happened a few years ago, when a recent graduate who was attending Suffolk Community College at the time volunteered his time to come help mentor and be an assistant coach for the boys. He helped run the summer leagues. He encouraged struggling players. He offered rides to all the boys. He had pasta parties at his house, and he did his own film sessions for these boys. All of this on his own time. And when the team lost in the playoffs that year, he drove in the rain that night. He went to each graduating player's house. He went to some of the juniors' house individually, and he told them to pick their heads up, be proud of themselves, because we at Sayville are a family. I know that, right, for a fact, because I looked on my porch and I saw this young man hugging my son. My son came inside with tears in his eyes, talking about, I'm not even an emotional guy. Right? That's my wife who's back here. He came inside with tears in his eyes that night, and he said to me, Dad, he was so distraught that his time at Sayville Soccer had come to an end. Now I ask you, is that a bad culture? I'm not going to dispute the fact that one family or a few families had a bad experience. Probably did happen, yes. That very well could be true. No idea from me. But you need to stop letting a very small select few paint the entire picture of what Sayville Soccer is about. Bad things happen to people, and a select few bad people might make those things happen. As a coach, I do not agree with hazing or bullying. It's something that happens every year, happens in every sport, happens in every classroom, and it happens on every playground. I just came here dressed like this from a soccer program of teaching 2nd grade kids. One kid just came up to me a couple hours ago, said, hey, coach, called me a little weenie, right? I had to deal with that issue. I didn't take that entire team right there as a bad team. I took those kids and I dealt with that issue. So I know that this stuff does happen. Our job is to protect the kids getting harmed, help them with coping skills, educate others about proper behavior. But we certainly don't go out and say that everyone who is somewhat associated with that group is now somehow at fault. That only serves to hurt more people. Over the past 2 seasons, I've had a new athletic director to report to. It has been nothing short of a wonderful, wonderful experience. It's been so much improvement that I've seen in our athletic department because of that person who's been in charge. But now, with one bad and inaccurate statement, Dr. Ferris has now taken innocent children and young adults and accused them of being racist and anti-Semites. He's damaged the reputation of Sayville soccer on the acts of a few individuals. On the back of my shirt right here, as you can see, it says one school, one team, one dream. I love this community because we stick together and we have a culture which creates lifelong bonds. You came here a little over a year ago and with no history or knowledge of any of these boys from the past that I know so well. And with one broad stroke, you damaged all their reputations. And in a position of power, you decided to label all of them as anti-Semites and racist. I was told there was a thorough investigation into the acts of the boys team. I would think with the resume that I just shared with you, that a thorough investigation might at least include one phone call to myself. Over the past 8 years of working at the school, I have been with these boys. I have been in the locker room with them, right? I've had these teams at my house. I've had them up at the summer for payment for off-season workouts. I listen intently. And if you know me, I have a very open relationship with the kids. I don't know if there's a sign on my says tell me everything you know, but you go ask any high school student that I've coached, and they will tell you, coach, they always feel open and they tell me things. Sometimes I don't want to hear things. I put my earplugs in and say, stop telling me that stuff. But I never, in this thorough investigation, was asked not even one single question. Honestly, it doesn't seem very thorough to me. I am not without fault, right? And there's not one of us in this room that's going to come here that has not made a mistake in their life. I have made plenty and I know that. But what I'm asking is when we do make mistakes, we need to look for solutions. And I'm asking Dr. Ferris to own the mistake you made, right? By labeling and accusing innocent people. My own personal wardrobe consists of 90% soccer clothes. The way you see me now, and anyone that knows me in town, is probably how you see me. I look in there now, and for me to wear this shirt, I'm associated with the girls team, and I have kids on the boys team. I have a hard time putting on these clothes now, right? Because if I wear these out, I'm now associated with an anti-Semite and with a racist. And as I mentioned earlier, I am not here to dispute if there are findings of a few individuals doing harmful things to other individuals. But I am here to shed light and offer perspective that your words have caused harm to innocent people, including myself, my family, and this Sayville soccer program that I love so deeply. Thank you.
That concludes the public comment portion. I'll just give a closing statement. Sayville is a great community. We take pride in doing what is right. And we as a board support Dr. Ferris and the administration with the actions they have taken. With the first step to address any issue is to recognize there is one. And we feel together as a community, we can grow through this to make Sayville an even better place. Thank you.
I'd say one thing.
Yeah.
I'd like to say one thing. If you're all right if I say one thing, I know you're leaving your journalism. Kind of capture the words because I'm guessing and reflecting on what everybody said. And I think I said this to the parents somewhat when we were in the room together. It was my intention in that email to point out two different things that were concerning and to try to make sure that it did not happen again. However, it was not my intention to paint any of the kids as racist or anti-Semites. And for that, if that happened, that was not intentional. And it happened and upset. And all I can say for that is that I am sorry. And I'm trying to figure out a way forward so that these kids can heal and move on.
Maybe you should put that in writing and let that go out to the public.
It's recorded and I could.
No, I mean, it's all of media.
I didn't have to say that, but I feel like.
Okay, at this time, of close the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Jones.
Sal, we up?
Not yet.